Hello, Bible readers. It is Wednesday, October 28th, and we are reading from Judges chapters 7 through 9 and Luke chapter 20, and then we just barely get into chapter 21. I'm going to start there at Luke. The question is, how shall we understand the kingdom of God? What is the Messiah for? What is Jesus for? As much as the Pharisees and chief priests, the leadership, as much as they have questioned, where does Jesus come from? Are you a troublemaker or are you a prophet? As I said yesterday, a prophet is a troublemaker to those in power, so they kind of forgot that. But now they're wondering, okay, what is the kingdom of God? What would a Messiah be for? And that's part of how and why they're talking past each other, really. Because in these controversies that we're reading about, we see in Jesus' opponents, the chief priests and scribes, the leaders, a perception that the kingdom of God is a political structure where allegiance to God has a direct political expression as one would be allegiant to a Jewish king. They are thinking about David, King David, a new king. And against such a perception, Jesus is saying things like God owns everything, and all things then must be given back to God or be used for or experienced with God in mind. This allegiance is not spelled out in terms of a political commitment to one individual king or any other person. It transcends any political expression. No king is going to receive the devotion of all the heart, soul, strength, and mind. Only God can. And so Jesus is trying to say something about God, and the leaders have a much smaller thought. Finally, this kingdom is then symbolized in our story for today by the widow, who, though left all alone in human terms, is not only herself alive, but capable of giving life by sharing all her living with others. That's what the kingdom is someone willing to give everything for the sake of others, which would be the opposite of a power-taking political group of people who just want to keep their power and wield power. And that's what the Pharisees and chief priests are. Okay, so in Judges, we have a downhill slide beginning. We've got some judges who mostly this is outlined by Gideon and his son Abimelech. Sorry. Songs just have to come to mind when I try to remember the names of these people in the Old Testament. So I'm going to read some from this downhill slide. As we move into the second phase of the Judges period, because remember the first phase, they were very faithful and victorious. The second phase, two major characters are going to stand out, Gideon and Abimelech. And there's this transition from victory and faithfulness to idolatry and the reckless, selfish use of military might and violence. Gideon himself shifts from being an idol breaker to an idol maker. His son, I was going to say something else about Gideon. It's the tale of a leader who changes from a timid but faithful leader who relies on God to a bold but ultimately unfaithful leader who takes matters into his own hands. It's interesting because Gideon feels inadequate to serve God, as many of us do, like Moses did, like Jeremiah. When we get to that book, he'll talk about, I'm not worthy. So the question for those who feel unworthy to serve God in the ways that they're called to serve, they can either turn to God for help and say, okay, I can't do this on my own, I need your help, or they can look to empty places. And Gideon would be an example of someone who looks to empty places. His son is just an example of an unfaithful, just completely unfaithful person. His mother, Abimelech's mother, is a Canaanite, of course. He declares himself king. He kills Gideon's 70 other sons, who are all Israelites, to solidify his power. Finally, he is killed in a pretty not great manner as God's repayment for the disgraceful way in which he ruled over Israel. And here's the part I wanted to get to. Previous and effective judges like Ehud and Deborah had united Israel, defeated the enemy, and praised God for their victories. Abimelech does the exact opposite. He causes divisions within Israel, kills his own people, and fights for his own honor and glory. Abimelech is a sign that the strategy of leading Israel through the temporary leaders called judges is in serious danger of unraveling. The qualities of leadership lifted up with Othniel, we're seeing the opposite with someone like Abimelech. And that's how Judges is continuing the story of unraveling. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.